I call to order this meeting of the Concord Planning Board on Tuesday, January 30th, 2024 at 7 p.m. The Planning Board is convening this meeting by video conference using the Zoom application. This meeting will be recorded for future on-demand viewing. I'd like to welcome everyone attending this meeting and take attendance of members and staff. Rob Almeida.
Here.
Andrew Boardman.
Here.
Abby Flanagan.
Here.
Sue Felshen. This is not here yet. And Mark Giddings.
Here.
And I, Linda Miller, am here as well. And we also have with us our town planner, Elizabeth Hughes. I'll briefly review our meeting procedures. Each vote will be conducted by roll call. There will be public participation during certain portions of the meeting. Those participating remotely wishing to make a statement or ask a question during a public participation period should use the Zoom raised hand function or *9 on a phone and wait to be recognized. Once recognized, you may unmute yourself in Zoom or use *6 from a phone and then speak. When you speak, please address the chair, identify yourself by name, address, and any relevant affiliations, and speak clearly for the meeting record. Comments during public participation are limited to 3 minutes or less, except for extenuating circumstances, such as for those with disabilities, and are requested to be respectful. Answers to questions, unless very brief and fact-based, will be deferred for follow-up at future meetings. The board welcomes written comments at any time instead of or in addition to those made during public participation. We'll now go to the first item on our agenda, which under administrative business will be public comment. General public comment is limited to 15 minutes with no more than 3 minutes allocated to any one speaker. Public comment is limited to items that are not on the agenda. Do any participants wish to speak during public comment? If not, thank you, and we'll move on to the draft scenic roads bylaw rules and regulations discussion. First, I want to thank everyone who has worked so very hard to bring these rules and regulations to this point in the discussion. We've scheduled a hearing to vote on the final form of these rules and regulations at our meeting on February 20th at 7 p.m. Thank you, of course, to the Historical Commission, which brought this bylaw to town meeting. Thanks to everyone at town meeting of 2022, where it was decided that a core group of scenic roads throughout Concord should be protected for their historic and aesthetic values, similar to protections offered across many other towns in Massachusetts, following the adoption of the Scenic Roads Act in 1973. Thanks to the Concord Public Works, including the Tree Warden and the Public Works Commission, who have maintained these stone walls and trees for decades prior to the establishment of the bylaw. And finally, thanks to the Planning Division and past and present members of the Planning Board, as well as Town Council and other staff who've contributed to this effort. It truly is a privilege to walk, bike, and drive among these byways across the town, and we are so pleased that they'll be preserved for future residents and visitors to admire. So what I'd like to do now is turn to the 10/4/23 draft version of the rules and regulations posted online. And I hope that working together, we can be expedient and go through and really create our final draft for presentation in a couple of weeks. What I'd like to do is go through the document page by page. And unlike most meetings, I'd like to take public comment after each page, after the planning board members have commented, and after each page as we work through the document together. So if we could turn to that document, page 1 of 7 starts with general provisions. It goes from 1.1 through 1.4. in that. There were two comments from town council. And I don't know if Elizabeth, you could put that up on the screen so everyone who doesn't have the document in front of them can also see it. Thank you.
While Elizabeth is doing that, Linda, I missed roll call, but I am here.
Oh, thank you very much, Sue. Okay, we're glad you're here and we're glad you identified yourself for the record. And as you can see, there were two comments, I think minor comments from town council. If we could have any board members who would either like to comment on those two comments or have any other comments that they'd like to bring up on page 1. I don't see anyone on my screen. And anyone from the public who would like to unmute themselves and comment on page 1. So I'm going to assume then that everyone is comfortable with town council's comments, and we will move on to page 2. And I see from town council, there are no comments, but I believe there might be comments. Are there any from members of the board on page 2? Are there any comments from members of the public?
Madam Chair, this is Melissa Sawfield. I live at 7 Concord Green, number 7. The one minor, and I would also ask Nancy Nelson if she'd like to speak to this, on 1.4.5 stone wall, at least knee high, we have felt that that's a little, arbitrary. That could be Kevin Garnett's knee or it could be my granddaughter's knee. I mean, it doesn't, I don't know that it adds anything. So perhaps we would just strike it.
Does a height requirement strike you, not want to use it. Do you think a height requirement is necessary there in terms of defining a stone wall?
I don't think so. Nancy knows more about stone walls. Nancy, what because this.
I don't have a problem with the definition, including either by having stones rest on stones. It's just confusing that they would have identified for single stones that are a large size, and that abut one another, that they would be at least knee height. So I don't know that I have ever seen a real stone wall in Concord that is just single stones abutting each other. So I wouldn't mind if that was deleted. And I don't think there's a need actually for a minimum stone wall requirement, because some of the oldest stone walls are actually quite close to the ground because they've been cannibalized over the years. So I think that my only initial problem with stones, the knee height idea, but I'm resolved that maybe that will never come up in Concord, and I'm tending to feel okay about it.
Okay, I see there are other comments from the board. Sue?
Yes, I'd like to suggest that particularly in light of the issue of cannibalization, a wall could be cannibalized down to being only,
Yum.
wait, or did I say a funny word there? A wall could be cannibalized down to the level of having only single stones, at which point it would not qualify at all and would no longer be a wall. And in fact, it would be a reason for any uncategorized wall. It would be a reason to encourage people to sneak out and slip stones off in order to make a wall no longer qualify. I agree that knee height is really not a very clarifying explanation or definition. but some minimum height, such as, oh, at least 1 foot high, or at least 1.5 feet high, seems like suitable for single stones. Just because we haven't stumbled across, rather painfully, such a wall yet, if we trip over it, doesn't mean it isn't out there somewhere, particularly in the case where it has been broken down to the point that we don't have stones resting on stones, at least for some length of the wall.
Okay, Sven, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that there was a certain reason why this evolved over time, from one discussion to the other. And the biggest reason was to think is what is included in the definition of stone wall if stuff like this height restrictions are taken out. So we started to avoid including kind of walls that are like a few stones stuck on top of each other, just to mark kind of a little area on your property boundary, and are not really historic stone walls as we all think about these stone walls now. So just to have some differentiation of just lining up and stacking a couple of stones is a difference than having a stone wall that has a certain minimum height. I think a 1 foot or so is fine, but if you completely take a height limit out, we might have kind of stones that, in my example, on my property, there is a few stones lined up in front of the property that suddenly would establish a stone wall.
Nancy, I see your hand again.
I think just by taking out the single stones of knee height, might be reasonable, because it seems to me to say that the single stones have to be at least knee height. So that doesn't make any sense to me, but
So it's
I
the
think
grammar.
I think stone walls that have been really the stones have been stolen over the years, and there's a remnant wall. Those may be some of the oldest walls, so I'd hate to see that part stricken that says minimum height, either by having stones rest on stones. I think that should stay.
Nancy, can you clarify that a little bit? So if stones rest on stones, then by this definition, it's a wall as long as the other features also qualify. So the reason it says single stones of at least knee height is because if they're not single stones, then they're resting on top of each other. It's covered by the first bit.
Right.
So are you suggesting saying either by having stones rest on stones or by being at least some
No,
height?
I'm saying let the definition of a stone wall include having stones rest on stones.
Okay, so then if there is some section of wall where there's one particularly large stone and whatever stones used to be on top of it have been taken away, that means that it would constitute a break in a stone wall because the single stone would not qualify as a wall. So then maybe the portions on either side would still be a wall, but any run of single stones, even if over a foot high, even if it's only a stone wall remnant, would not qualify and would not be protected. That's the idea.
Not sure I'm following you, Sue. Sorry. You're talking about a large stone on top of other stacked stones that
No, I'm just talking about one particularly large stone that ended up in a wall that's like 1.5 feet high, but there's nothing on top of it, either because any other stones got taken away or because however that stone ended up there, it was considered sufficient.
Well, it's still stacked on something, right? So I don't think that's a problem.
But how is it stacked on something? It could be just that one stone as a remnant in a wall that's resting on the ground and has nothing on top of it.
I really hadn't thought about that much. Sorry.
I
don't think that's an important case or a typical case.
No, I don't, I agree with you. I don't think it's a typical case, but it just seems like um, a little dangerous to exclude that kind of wall remnant if we really think those are the oldest walls, some of the oldest walls in town and worthy of protection.
So just to move this along.
I don't
It
have
sounded
a
like,
big problem with leaving the whole thing because I don't think the second part is ever gonna come up.
I agree with Nancy. I would just say, let's leave it.
So you mean the language that Elizabeth has now of at least a foot high? And if it never triggers, then so much the better, it never triggers.
Yeah, Elizabeth might have point of view on that, but that works for me.
Yes.
Okay, so as Elizabeth has it now, it works for both of you, and then Sven, I'm sorry, are you comfortable with that or not? A height requirement either by having stones rest on stones or by having single stones of at least a foot high abutting one another?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So that would be our page 2. Okay, onward to page 3, which I believe goes from 1.4.7, removal, rebuilding, or destruction of stone walls, through 2.1.7. And I believe there's an error under 2.2.1, the first sentence under application, unless exempt pursuant to section 3.5, I think that has been corrected to 2.5. And then I have a question on, this is a little confusing, on 2.1.1, where it says the application is required to have one original scenic roads bylaw application stamped by the town clerk. And then if we hop to page 4 under timing of hearing.
That's too far, Elizabeth. Back up
Yeah,
again.
you've kind of gone past it. 2.2.2, right, timing of hearing, and then it says this, oh, I see, you, it says scenic roads alteration application, and it looks to me like in some places it's scenic roads bylaw application, and the other place it's scenic roads alteration application. I just think it should be the same. Is that something people are comfortable with?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also on page 3, under 2.1.2,
Previous page.
previous page. 2.1.2, on the first line, a site plan to scale showing the property boundary and any stone wall or walls and trees located in the public right-of-way. Here, I would like to include, as we often see when these sorts of plans are submitted, I'd like to see the size of the trees identified on the plan. As opposed to just, here are 6 trees, period.
An alternative way of doing it is to add a sentence at the end after the plan shall be prepared and stamped by registered land surveyor, saying trees shall be identified by caliper inch or whatever other measurement.
I think both would be acceptable. Perhaps if people agree to that, then we could have Elizabeth
Yep.
okay.
Yes, only change breadth to breadth. Yes, you were already on top of it.
Okay. Any other comments on page 3? I see Nancy first.
Oh, I didn't take my hand down.
Oh, that's
Sorry.
okay. Okay,
Sorry
and
about that.
Mr. Dukran, thank you.
Yes, yes, hi, not really the public, but the town engineer.
Yes,
And we had worked on the draft regulations and worked with the Public Works Commission. And you have, I think it's been submitted, our comments, but this particular line 2.12,
yes,
I think a little bit of change there will help achieve some of the concerns we had. So if I were to read it like this, a site plan to scale showing the property boundary and clearly identifying any stone walls and trees with the addition that you just added. Okay? Are you
okay,
in
so
agreement?
you would like between and any, you'd like clearly identifying.
That's correct.
Of course.
All right, and continue with that. So located in the public road right of way, in borrowing some language from above, or on the boundary thereof. Thereof. Yeah, and then I'm okay with the rest of it.
Okay, is everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Sure.
any other comments on page 3?
No.
Okay. Thank you. On to page 4. I think okay, so I think that that goes from 2.2 public hearing, from 2.2.1 notice down to 2.3.3 scenic and aesthetic characteristics. So I believe on item 2.2.1B, there was a comments here that say, should I read it? In the event that the planning board holds a joint hearing with the tree warden acting under Mass General Law, Chapter 87, the advertisement noting such joint meeting shall be made by the tree warden. Is that agree? Oh, I see. Mr. Dukran, would you like to comment on that? Or is your hand still up?
I think his hand is still up.
Yeah, sorry, my hand's still up. I gotta lower it. Okay.
Okay, fine.
There we go. Sorry,
Okay,
yeah.
so I think that's a change everyone feels comfortable with. Okay. And then again, the scenic roads alteration, we made that change. And then down at 2.3.2, historical character and values. I believe there was a yes, I think after in this second line, starting the proposed project in the context of the existing, and then there was a request to insert after the words existing, historic character and relevance to the built features such as historic buildings and so on. Elizabeth, are you with us on that? After the word existing and
Previous paragraph.
2.3.2. Then you would insert historic character and relevance to the.
I don't get it.
Let's see what it looks like.
Historical character and values.
Did I get that?
One more time.
Let me make sure.
I thought it was historical character and values. I thought that's what they have.
Oh, is that what they?
Character,
Okay.
the
Historic-
relevant, historic character and relevance.
Relevance. Relevance, like, does it make a difference?
Right, historic character and relevance to the built features such as. So can people take a moment to review that change?
Hmm. Hmm. Thanks.
I'm
Okay.
not sure what that means.
Sven, would you be willing to
Yeah.
comment on that?
Yeah, and we discussed this in the Public Works Commission. The concern we had was that, let's say, you have a rather young stone wall, a wall that fulfills all characteristics as the definition of the stone wall, but is, let's say, 3 years old. Yeah, is that stone wall really relevant to fall under the definition or under the cover of this bylaw? So some way out to say if it's kind of not really historic or is historic relevant to stone wall itself, to have a way out. Otherwise, you would have to have everything that is built, no matter one, even if it's just a few months old, would fall under the stone wall definition. So that was a concern, to give some way of wording within that section to look at the historic character and relevance to the rest of this.
Sue, would you like to comment on that?
Yes, I see your point, Sven, but then it seems to me that the language is exactly backwards because the insertion applies not to the wall, which may be young and fails to be historic, but it refers to the built features such as historic buildings. I thought the meaning, the way I read it, what it says is if there are some built features of historic buildings that are themselves not historic, like if somebody has somehow gotten permission to install some pink plastic extrusion on top of an historic building for some reason, then the wall would be irrelevant to that modern feature. If this is really meant to apply to the historic character and relevance of the wall itself, I think this phrase needs to get inserted in a different place.
Yeah, I think if you have a proposal how to make it clearer,
Well, that's a great suggestion, Elizabeth.
that's easy.
As I'll wait.
Except I think it should be the historic character and relevance of the existing stone wall. Although then we don't even need the word existing, actually. Or in fact, the word existing should go in front of built features. So in the context of the historic character and relevance of the stone wall to the existing built features.
What? Can I weigh in?
Yes, please.
I think that's adequately covered as written, because you're looking at the proposed project, which is dismantling part of a stone wall, in the context of the existing built features, such as historic buildings, structures and sites, monuments, blah, 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 blah. You're looking at it in the context. So I don't see what the added tinkering with the language does for it. I don't understand why it's not fine the way it is. Seems to cover it.
So you were saying that if there's a stone wall that is just 3 years old in the original wording, it would not fall under the stone wall or under the scenic road bylaw? I don't see that.
Well, you're talking about a 3-month-old wall. And usually what we're going to be talking about are stone walls that are going to be dismantled. So you're going to be taking apart a new wall, but you still have to examine what you know, you can still look at the context and the impact within the context on other features. So all you have to do is look at it. I mean, it doesn't require that.
Yeah, but it doesn't require that the stone, so far it only says without the addition in the context of the existing build features. It doesn't has any reference that it should have a reference that the stone wall itself should have a kind of a historic character.
No, it doesn't require a stone wall.
But that's exactly our concern in the public works discussion, that we had different options to either have a kind of a age, that we have an age requirement of, I
So
don't know,
is this
2
something
years.
is this something that you guys have thought about for a long time and you could recommend? I mean, it's very impossible to tell the age of stone walls usually.
Yeah, so that's why we went back and forth on this. We had long discussions around this.
So you're asking for something that's not possible to do, maybe.
I'm not sure.
Well, you guys are scientists, right? There's no scientific way. Anyway, that's my opinion. Seems fine.
Melissa?
So I have a question about the 19th century and earlier. You know that our definition of a historic for a building under demolition delay is 50 years. And, you know, I kind of question 19th century. I think there are, you know, historic properties in the 20th century as well. I mean, given that 1901 is 123 years ago.
So could we just eliminate 19th century and earlier and just say historic buildings?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So
Can I make a suggestion?
yes,
I think you're wordsmithing particulars, and these are items for consideration of a decision. And the planning board, you know, has the ability to consider things. These are just providing guidance for the board as part of their consideration. I think a little bit of clarification, the example that Sven gave is the house on Barrett's Mill Road that just rebuilt brand new stone wall all the way across the front. The stone wall was built exactly like the abutting property that has a stone wall. To Nancy's point, in a couple of seasons, you won't be able to tell when each was built. But from, you know, from a relevant standpoint, 20 years from now, if somebody wanted to go in and take that stone wall down, there would be a conversation about that. So I don't think when you're talking about items that are providing direction to the board to consider, that they need to be so exact in particular.
right.
I think the points the Public Works Commission made are good points, and I think the definition as it's now written provides that guidance for consideration for the board.
Sounds good to me. If everyone else is comfortable, let's move on from page 4 onto page 5. And that starts with 2.3.4 and goes through 2.4.5. I don't see that town council had any comments here. Are there any from members of the board or from the public? Okay, then on to page 6, which is 2.4.6 through 4.1. And I think this is where we probably have more comments. And I don't know if here Public Works would like to discuss, but I do see Sue's hand up.
Actually, my hand is up regarding 4.1. So if anyone has anything earlier, please go ahead of me.
Linda and I guess Sven, if it's helpful, I can bring up Public Works Commission's letter.
Yeah.
Yeah, would you like to discuss this comment at all?
Sure. Hang on one second.
Yeah, so we have 2 comments on this page, the 251D exemptions, just adding including work on retaining walls in the end. Discussed in the Public Works Commission, and as long as most of the emergency work is really around retaining walls that are often critical and need to be done quite quickly, and it was unclear for us that is kind of really implicitly really spelled out. So we would propose to spell it like concretely out to add including work on retaining walls on 251D. That emergency work can be done there. And then on section 3.1, it's just picking up on the comments from town council that the order of the process, let's say, should be defined. Town council seem to be ambivalent in which order. So from Public Works Commission proposal would be these 3 steps: to have first joint hearing before the planning board and the tree warden, then written approval of the planning board and tree warden, and then written approval from Concord Public Works in these 3 steps, and have that spelled out so that an applicant has clearance in what are the steps and what needs to be done when.
Regarding your first comment, Sven, I think it would be prudent to say including emergency work on retaining walls, just in case, just to prevent somebody to read that as meaning including all work on retaining walls.
Yeah.
I had a question there, just do we need to define retaining walls in our definitions, Elizabeth, or can we assume that people know what a retaining wall is and it doesn't need to be defined for?
I think the planning board had conversations about this at length already, and
Mhm.
I think it's challenging to define a retaining wall. There are many different types of retaining wall, and there are historic stone walls that do act as retaining walls as well.
Mhm.
Again, I think putting this into a little bit perspective, everybody everybody knows what a stone wall is. And, you know, if a stone wall is holding back dirt, it's a retaining wall, but not all retaining walls are stone walls. You know, there's
Right.
many block walls that are retaining walls and they're not stone walls. So, I don't see an issue. And I think, so I think Sven, your first comment was, under 251D, to add the language about,
I think it was including emergency work on retaining walls. But I don't remember the exact words.
Yeah, we just propose including work on retaining walls before
Yes.
the end of the sentence.
And were you okay with adding the word emergency, so including emergency work? Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
and then, to Sven's second, comment, you suggested having that order under 3.1.
Mhm. And I-
Even though town council's comment is up here under 2.4.6. I think, you know, I can wordsmith this. And we don't need to do that now, but to make it clear that, that the approval process goes in this order.
I think that would be adequate. And then, okay.
So I'll have this revision ready, for the board for the public hearing.
Okay. And then on to the issue with enforcement. And I think these were primarily comments from town council with regard to what is permitted. And were there any comments from yes, Sue?
Yes, I have a comment on that, which is that town council has struck the fee of 275 per inch in circumference.
Mhm.
And it seems to me that that means there is no alternative to restoration. And I was thinking about the case where, for example, the town may have long-term or medium-term plans that would make it not ideal to restore to the original conditions. Suppose there's been a desire to put a sidewalk through where there was a tree, or suppose conditions have changed such that this is no longer a good location for a tree because of, I don't know, climate change, new flooding conditions or something along those lines. It seems to me that the planning board ought to have the option to allow the applicant to pay an amount equivalent to whatever restoration would cost at the discretion of the planning board. And this would solve the problem, I think, of town council's problem specifically with the 375 per inch. But I believe that this question would have to get run back past town council to see whether it is acceptable to them. And plus there's a question of, I don't know if everyone else agrees that there ought to be an option other than forced restoration with no alternative.
Hmm.
And I have actually a second comment under this section, which I'll get to when everyone is done with this one.
Sven, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, again, we had a long discussion in the Public Works Commission. Is our understanding is that the tree bylaw is still active. So we have two bylaws that go side by side, and a tree bylaw actually gives a mechanism of how a tree that is taken down is replaced. And it's an inch by inch replacement, where either at the same location or at locations defined by the tree warden, new trees are planted to make up for that tree. So there is already a mechanism in place to make up, and it's an inch by inch and there's a standard on about what height the diameter is measured. So I want to bring that in as information that we have a second bylaw that sits side by side to this.
But that only covers trees and not walls. I gave trees as an example because it seemed more plausible, but perhaps an existing stone wall was in a location which now is problematical for whatever reason. There would be no alternative other than to restoring it in that exact location.
Yeah, again, that would only cover subsection A here with respect to trees, not B with respect to stone walls. Yes.
So are you
Well,
saying,
that's
I'm sorry, Sven, so are you saying that we should eliminate this because it's already covered by the tree bylaw? Because and that it's like a double penalty, both for under the tree bylaw and under the scenic roads bylaw, and that would be inappropriate? Or are you saying that we should have both bylaws cover the same situation?
Yeah, again, ideally you would refer it as a tree bylaw. We discussed here that okay, the replacement here is a bit more than what a tree bylaw is because it's per square inch, and the tree bylaw is per inch of, I think, diameter, not radius, I think diameter. So it's a bit of a different measure. We somehow thought it that this probably will override the amount of replacement, but the way how it is replaced, where the replacement trees are done or planted, that is covered also under the tree bylaw. That can be at the same location or locations the tree warden is defining. It could be somewhere else in town where it's just additional trees are planted because it makes sense. On an analysis of the tree warden. So if you want to avoid any kind of contradicting language, you probably should consider to referring to the tree bylaw, because there are two different measures here. But we were more looking at is like, okay, it's already done. There is a rule on how this is replaced.
Well, it would be ideal to amend the tree bylaw to switch to square inch, since that is a much more equitable measurement in terms of trees. But failing that, one could insert a sentence here saying that the square inch per square inch replacement under this bylaw supersedes the diameter inch measurement of the tree bylaw, because then there would not be some kind of double jeopardy. But on the other hand, it should say that the alternative location as approved by the tree warden per the tree bylaw does qualify, because otherwise the tree must be replaced in the same location. Also, my question was really broader. It's not just striking of the fee for trees, but even for walls, there is no alternative to replacement, even if the town does not actually prefer replacement in existing location for some reason. And I wonder if if that's what people really want, then we should proceed with this bylaw as written regarding stone walls. But I wonder if that is, in fact, what we want.
So can I just add, we're talking about enforcement. So we're talking about somebody who removed a stone wall without permission.
Mhm.
I'm not,
Right.
either the person is gonna file an application and the board's gonna approve the removal, or the board's gonna make them put the stone wall back.
Okay, it's true that the alternative where someone illegally removes a wall, and yet it turns out the town would rather not have the wall there in the first place, is so rare that perhaps we just don't need to worry about it.
Or they're gonna file an application under 244, and they're gonna get permission to have a portion of the wall stay removed. So
Right, that's why I said illegally removed. If they correctly apply, then the town has the opportunity to say, well, maybe we don't want you to rebuild it there. It's only in the illegal case, and that should be so rare to combine illegality with not wanting the wall there anyway. So I guess I don't have a problem with that. And Sven's comment about the tree bylaw already covers replacement in a different location, except that I do think we need to, under what is now A, be a little more clear about how these two bylaws relate to each other and who supersedes for what.
Nancy, is your hand up? Nancy, you're muted.
Can you hear me now? I was just gonna say that 2.2 or the 2.4.4 seems to say that the planning board may require repair, and so that gives some flexibility for the planning board for the repair of stone walls.
Well, that said may require it to be consistent, but still, that's some flexibility.
Yeah, some. That's all you need.
Now, if we're ready, I have a second comment regarding 4.1.
Yes, please go ahead.
And actually, this is a more general comment. I'm not sure that I've understood the relationship of all the sections to each other properly. We have rigorous requirements for restoration under section 4.1, but in section 4.3, we have a fine of $300. And what I can't tell is if someone violates the bylaw and is intransigent, do they get fined $300 and that's the end of it? Or do they get fined $300 and have to undergo the restoration as required by section 4.1? It didn't, unless I missed something, I didn't think it was clearly specified which was the case. I mean, $300 compared to restoring a wall or replacing it or replacing a tree is just nothing. So anyone who wanted to, if all they need to do is pay the $300 fine, people would just do whatever they felt like and then pay the $300. And
So
on
it's
the
not
other
just-
hand,
it's not $300, it's each day is considered a separate offense. So it's
Okay, so it's-
$300 a day.
per day, and then they also have to undergo the restoration under 4.1.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it is clear that these both apply and not just one of them. Thanks.
So, yeah, if you look at the appendix A, which
Appendix A.
for the non-criminal disposition of the bylaw, it's
in the bylaw.
$300. And
Well,
each day,
$300 per violation, and where does it clarify that the violation is a day?
under the non-criminal disposition.
Okay, I would
bylaw.
have had to have cross-reference that, and then I would have understood, and that's my problem. I failed to look at.
But I'll look at the language and see about adding it to this.
Are there additional comments or questions?
Nope. Oh, no, I'll take down my hand.
Check, check, check. We're good?
Check,
All
check,
right.
check.
Thank everyone
Hallelujah.
for, and we'll look forward to celebrating on February 20th at the hearings.
Yes, can I just add, thank you very much, Linda, and the members of the planning board, because this is a lot of work and a lot of time. I think it's 2+ years, and to Elizabeth for her incredible,
Elizabeth, yeah,
Yes,
incredible
Elizabeth,
patience and leadership on this.
yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
here.
you're here. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. So now, moving right along, I believe Elizabeth is going to talk about the community planning grant funds. Is that right?
Not before I save this. Hey. Okay. I don't know why. Okay, I don't know why. Is Nancy the only one that everybody sees? Oh, I have to remove a pin. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry. All right, so as everybody knows, the town received $25,000 in community planning grant funds to hire the consultant to do the economic feasibility analysis. And when we applied for the funds, those had just started being done by outside consultants. And the first one that was done was $25,000. And then the state and other agencies stepped in and said, whoa, that's really way too much. And the state provided more guidance on how those EFAs had to be done and to really bring down the cost. And now the economic feasibility analysis that our consultant is finishing up, which I believe is going to be finished up in the beginning of February, came in at $15,000. So I had a conversation with the director who's running that section of HLC, and she said to speak to her staff about what the town could possibly do with the remaining $10,000, and basically don't give it back to the Department of Revenue if you don't have to. So I did meet with HLC staff, and the main point of those funds that the Department of Revenue has been giving to the communities the use of those funds has to be tied in some manner to the MBTA communities multifamily law, and looking at compliance with the MBTA communities requirements. So one item that I thought, and this came up during since June, as the board was getting all the public feedback and the community meetings and workshops, and was originally looking at the mixed use, the existing combined business residents, looking at the MBTA communities for like the Thoreau Depot Business District, West Concord Village, and West Concord Business District, and ultimately the consensus was that the the risk of having those areas included in the MBTA Communities Overlay District and having those areas have by right multifamily and not have that mixed use. At this time, that risk, the benefit did not outweigh that risk for a lot of people. So those areas weren't included, but the planning board has consistently talked about, and not just MBTA communities, but just, in your housing, promoting housing goals and economic vitality, looking at the combined business residence zoning and, looking at ways to amend that to, spur some economic development and some housing in, those village areas. So my conversation with the staff at HLC was, could the town use that $10,000 to, once again, just look at the combined business residence zoning and, look again at how that might be amended, because, there's definite consensus that, how it is written right now, it's not implementable. It's not being used. So they said yes, so long as how HLC staff went back to DOR and said, the town wants to use this $10,000 to look at amending their mixed use zoning and considering how the creation of an amendment to that zoning would be in compliance with the MBTA guidelines. The point made is that, the consultant would assist the board in looking at the zoning and amending the zoning and provide options for how that amendment may be done to be in compliance with the MBTA zoning. The board and the town may not decide to incorporate that, but at least the board has looked at how you could amend the zoning to be in compliance. You may decide not to go that direction, but that was how they crafted an ability to be able to utilize those funds. And that's all I can do for right now.
Thank you for your able negotiating. So that's great. Any questions or thoughts on that process? Okay, then
Well, that was a little bit tricky to follow in terms of that very carefully threaded needle of, we could look at combined business residence in general with an eye toward whether it could be made MBTA compliant, but we might, if we chose not to go the MBTA compliant way, still learn something that could inform general changes.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Then I did great.
Yep. That's exactly it.
looks like we have public comment on that, if there's no more questions from the board. Steve Newmeyer?
Yeah, I'm just trying to follow what you said. Are you saying the new proposal would be part of the MBTA warrant?
No, I did not
Be
say
two-
anything about the existing warrant.
Okay,
This is separate, looking out to next year.
I see.
And
I
it's,
see.
and it's looking at business residents and being able to move forward with that. But no, there'll be no changes to the existing articles as they've been submitted unless, the town doesn't like them or the state doesn't like them.
Yeah, it seemed late. It seemed late in the process to make
Yeah,
changes to it.
no,
Um,
this is.
So,
And
and then
for
the
the
other,
record, we will need a street address.
And then the
Oh.
other
From-
big news is the prison is being shut down. And
So the
that's-
See,
prison,
that's a
prison,
different topic, and we'll get to that when we talk about town planner updates and liaison reports.
okay, but I was just wondering if the $10,000 could be used to study the prison and if that's doable.
No.
I would say that is something the planning board is not in at all likely to undertake on its own. So I think that would be a project that would fall to a larger constituency across the whole town. So I doubt that we would use those funds in that regard. But as we go forward, anything we do in terms of business residents always could apply to that area, but not specifically for that area, if that makes any sense. So
Right.
it would be zoning that might be used in that area at some point, and that we would update our zoning code, but wouldn't necessarily be specifically looking within the planning board at MCI, no.
So the $10,000 would be to study this issue. We say town meeting, we pass the MBTA Act at town meeting. And then next year we spend $10,000 researching this issue. It just seems kind of odd to me that we're researching compliance with the MBTA Act after we've already passed the MBTA Act. It seems
so-
weird to me.
so we're not, this is not to study compliance with the MBTA Act. This is to study amending the combined business residence section of the bylaw, which in most communities, they just call it mixed use bylaw. To amend the mixed use bylaw, there's certain provisions in the MBTA communities guidelines that allow mixed use bylaws to that are also, in compliance with the guidelines. So it would be looking at that combined business residence bylaw that we currently have and amending that. And as part of that amendment, is there a way also to have that bylaw be compliant with the mixed use guidelines for MBTA communities?
And the operative detail here is that the proposed overlay districts for this year's warrant article are almost entirely exclusive of where we're allowed to have combined business residents. So what we would be studying are areas that are not proposed to be covered that could potentially be covered in some future year's warrant article, depending on what the study materials came up with.
Okay, I understand now.
Thanks for the question. Any other comments, questions? Okay, then going on to planner liaison updates. And I did want to, obviously, the big topic is the Concord, MCI Concord developments that was discussed at the select board yesterday evening. It was discussed at the Concord Housing Development Corporation this morning and at the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund this late this afternoon. And I would just say sort of three quick items. First, the select board was not aware of this prior to its announcement in the governor's budget. So everybody is kind of at a level playing field, not knowing very much in terms of details. But the information will be coming from the town manager's office. So any questions, suggestions, areas of interest, etc., shouldn't really be going to town departments or committees. They should be addressed to the town manager's office. So we'll try and be informed for ourselves, but won't be responding until the town manager has decided where we're going with this, along with the select board. And the other thing, you know, and obviously it will take quite a long bit of time. The only action that's taken place is that the Concord Housing Development Corporation decided this morning to pause any development of Junction Village through September 2024, and they've formally withdrawn the application for that. They haven't withdrawn the application for the building on the Assabet River houses. So that will be continued to move forward, but there were no updates from either of those two committees other than what we've seen already that's been submitted in terms of the application that they've made to the planning board. So just trying to update people, and there should be a website at some point going up on the town's website, or a web page, to keep us all up to date.
I don't know. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to ask a question, Linda. Is there a timeline on the Assabet River project that needs to get accomplished before it sort of falls apart? I mean, there's certain timelines that we're held to be able to respond to things. They put an application before us. We continued that. Do they run out of time at some point?
Elizabeth, yeah,
Yeah,
would know
so, so the application is not before the planning board. It's.
Oh, that was just, okay. That was
It's
just,
it's a planned residential development special
Right.
permit application before the zoning board of appeals. The Board of Appeals has continued the public hearing to their meeting in March. I have not gotten any additional feedback from the applicants on revised material and addition material yet. So I'm not sure what the direction it's going, but eventually the Board of Appeals, the planning board's required to make a recommendation to the Board of
Right.
Appeals. So
Right.
Until that happens, the Board of Appeals is not going to take any action. But at some point, the Board of Appeals will say, you know, this obviously this project is not advancing. Certain things need to be worked out, and they will request the applicant withdraw the application without prejudice and
Okay.
then refile when they're ready.
okay.
So that's all I know about that one.
Yeah, the presentation they made to us was a month or so ago. I guess I lose track of time, and
Yeah.
it needed
Yeah.
some more. We obviously felt it needed some more work. So,
Right.
okay, thank you.
And
Going-
then-
Sorry,
Go
Sue.
ahead, Sue.
Going back to MCI Concord, I don't know how deeply we can go into this under town planner updates without it being a separate agenda item. But I was just looking the other day, and it appears the area is zoned industrial park A, perhaps. And it occurred to me that with everything going on, it might be necessary at some point to rezone it. I have no idea what timing would be like. Nobody knows what's going on with this. There is still the possibility of having a special town meeting within town meeting. It's not something I'm generally a fan of. We should get our ducks in a row before the warrant closes, but here is a case where it's actually legitimate. This happened after the warrant closed. There was nothing we could know about it. And I'm just throwing that out there as a possibility for a warrant article if for some reason anyone can
Yeah.
figure out anything in time.
Yeah. So I'm going to basically kind of put a halt on everybody's conversation about this and somewhat of a reality check. The closing of MCI Concord is in the governor's budget. There's months and months and months of conversation up on the Hill about the budget, and whether this survives in the governor's budget is unknown. Whether it's changed is unknown. If it does survive the governor's budget, and it is passed, then there is months and months and months of process that the state through DCAM, which is the Department of Assets and Department of Capital Assets and Management, they will have to go through and decide how they wish to dispose of the property. They will need to survey and decide what areas they wish to dispose of, because the parking lot, the large parking lot, is one large parcel where part of it is permanently protected under an Article 97. And if something has to change with that, that's a much longer process as well. So we're a long ways from the state even giving this, whether the town decides to take control of the property. From there, as you pointed out, Sue, and what Linda said, there's going to be a much larger conversation in other communities. It's basically a mini master plan process. Although I hope it's not a 13-member committee like when Envision Concord was done. But in that, and I think this is key to what the Concord Housing Development Corporation and halting their process is how that property can be part of that master planning visioning process, which will include how to rezone the property, what to rezone the property, what are the parameters. Are we looking at mixed use where some portion is for the wastewater treatment plant, some portion is for municipal use, some portion is housing, some portion is commercial. So there will be a process with all of that. So it's a very exciting opportunity, and it's going to have to it's going to go through this process. But right now, we all need to really get this to survive the governor in the governor's budget. That's our first step.
I see that Mary Hartman is present. Mary, would you like to comment on this?
Sure, thank you, Linda. I want to echo what basically what Linda said earlier and what Elizabeth just said. This is going to be multi-year. My mouth isn't working. It's going to take a long time to sort this all out. And it just starts with the budget, which might not even be approved until late summer. So we really have to think about this in the long term. And I think one of the important things that you said, Linda, is that we're hoping that all the communication with the state goes through the town manager's office. So I want to emphasize that. And the reason is we don't want to send mixed messages or maybe miss out on opportunities. So thank you for picking that up last night, Linda. And I just wanted to emphasize that again. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Any other comments on MCI Concord? If not, any other comments on liaison reports or anything else from Elizabeth in terms of town planner commentary? If not, then it's been an interesting meeting. I'm really so excited that we're moving forward with the with our stone walls and trees in Concord, and I think it was a effective meeting tonight, and I thank you all for being here.
Linda, could
yes.
we approve 4 sets of minutes?
Yes, please.
Oh, excuse me. Let's make it even more productive. We have 4 sets of minutes. Do I have any comments on any of the minutes? And if not, Sue, would you like to make the motion?
I would love to make a motion. I move that the planning board approves the minutes of September 26th, November 28th, and December 12th, 2023, and January 16th, 2024 as submitted.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. And then shall we vote? Andrew Boardman,
Yes.
Abby Flanagan,
Aye.
Sue Felshen,
Aye.
Mark Giddings,
Yes.
Rob Almeida,
Yes.
and myself, Linda Miller, yes. And so with that, I'll call it a night. Thank you all and see you on the 6th. Elizabeth, is that in person or virtual? Or both? I
No,
mean,
that is,
hybrid,
it is, it's virtual.
virtual. Okay. And then
Good
see
night.
you. See you. Good night.
Night.
Good night.